Item number 1 is the Finance Committee meeting of December 16th minutes.
Chairman, I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, in the absence of our other member, I'll second that. Comments or questions? All in favor? We should have 2 and 0. And then we have the minutes for the executive session for the same day.
I'll also move to approve the minutes of the executive session for Wednesday, December 16th, 2020.
I'll second that. All in favor? Passes. And we just hold on to the document, Janice. Item 3, North Mainland Pump Stations Contract Award.
Yes, sir. We're going to, with your permission, take items 3 and 4 together and allow votes on them separately because they are connected.
Yes.
Item 3 here is the Splost 2016 North Mainland Phase 3 Pump Station Project. These are 2 large pump stations that need to be upgraded to allow for the increased flow from the force main, which is item 4, to go through these pump stations. We received 2 bids on these pump stations, one from Southern Civil LLC, one from Popco. Southern Civil is the contractor that just completed the Ridgewood project and is also working on 4021 project as well. Based off the bids that were received, the funding for this project would be coming from the Splost funds. If you'll recall, this project has Splost funds in $11.7 million for the total project, and we also allocated $3.2 million in capital improvement funds. To date, with phases 1 and 2, we've spent $6.5 million of the Splost funds, leaving a balance in the project of $8.3 million. Down there at the bottom, you'll see the pump stations and force mains are included on that, but it's right at $7 million total award. So if we flip over to item 4, to the force main, we received 2 bids on the force main. This is 18,000 feet of force main installation along Harry Driggers and Canal, and 818 feet of 24-inch gravity sewer down Ogden Drive. There were multiple alternatives accepted for bid on this project for installation methods and materials. After review, the base bid was to horizontal directional drill the vast majority of the project with some open cut. We are recommending to award the force main contract to with alternate 1, which was open cutting more of the force main. That will make the pipe shallower so that if we have to dig and do any work to it, will be more accessible. And the jack and bore option for gravity installation down Ogden, we recommend going with the alternate to allow for open cutting gravity along that section. There is also 2,345 linear feet of 12-inch water main along Canal Road included in this project. That is not paid for with the Splost project. That will be paid for out of Project 704, which is another funded project. So if you flip over to the second page of the memo for the item number 4, you see down at the bottom, recommended contract award for pump stations to Southern Civil for $2.6 million. The overall contract for the force main and water main to low bid TB Landmark is $4.66 million. 4.34 of that comes from Splost. The $317,000 comes from Project 704. So with the remaining Splost balance after the pump station contract is awarded, we will at this time require $1.8 million of the $3.2 million of capital improvement funds previously allocated to this project for completion. As a note, the other Splost project that we have, the Pump Station 4003 upgrades, has a current uncommitted balance of just shy of $1 million. This project is scheduled for completion in May. Any funds that are not expended on that upon completion can be transferred to this project to offset some of the capital improvement funds that are included in here. So I won't go into full detail on the project like we did in the facilities. However, basically 2 recommendations, one for the pump stations to award to Southern Civil for $2.6 million and one for the force main and water main installation to TB Landmark for $4.66 million. TB Landmark was the contractor that did the 2032 force main on the island that came down Frederica, and they also did the 4048 force main reroute around 4005. So we have experience with both these contractors, and we've been successful with both of them thus far.
Okay, we heard both these projects in the previous committee meeting for facilities, so with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the Finance Committee recommend awarding the contract for the Splost North Mainland Phase 3 Pump Station Improvements Project to Southern Civil LLC in the amount of $2,612,040.
And I'll second that. All in
Can I ask
favor?
one question?
Yes.
On this item, it says the alternative items are the flow meter and the odor control. Are those going to become standard items on projects like this?
For
or-
large projects, the idea would to make them mostly standard. However, depending on available funding, we may have to make them alternates on some items.
Right, I mean, I know we're investing another, almost $400,000, but it's good for the
It's good for the
community,
system.
the utility and everything else, so.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's the only question I had.
Okay. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Passes 2-0. And then
When we get to
for
the-
item number 4,
Let me just get over to the page. All right, this is item number 4. I'll make a motion that the Finance Committee recommend awarding the contract for the Splost North Mainland Phase 3 Force Main Project to TB Landmark Construction, Inc. in the amount of $4,663,123.
and I'll second that. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor? All right, that passes 2-0. Then we'll move to item 5.
Yes, sir. This was also presented to the Facilities Committee. This is a U.S. Geological Survey Joint Funding Agreement for the continued monitoring of the Upper Florida Aquifer to determine the migration of chlorides throughout the system. This has been a long-term project for us, ongoing with U.S. Geological Survey. We've had fluctuations in our contribution amounts, which are matched by the USGS. Last couple of years, we've been at $60,000 annually. The proposed for this year is $65,700. The increase is due to the addition of full-time monitoring at the Ridgewood well that has just been brought online. So we would be contributing $65,700. USGS would be providing $64,000. There's also monitoring occurring on Jekyll Island that they have a separate agreement for. So this is budgeted in the Office of the Director's Technical Service budget, and there is enough sufficient funds to handle that in the Director's budget.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Finance Committee recommend the full commission enter to a joint funding agreement with USGS in the amount of $65,700 for the continuation of groundwater monitoring in the Upper Floridan Aquifer.
And I'll second the motion. Questions or,
I have one question. Is the monitoring, is that done through our SCADA system, or?
No, sir, you can
Oh,
go on
separate.
USGS's online system, and it's real time. You can pull the data up at any time that they have, and they also produce reports every so often of what the response has been.
Interesting. Thank you.
Occasionally, we will get a phone call about a water line that has been breaking because one of the groundwater wells is overflowing. There's one at pump station 4003 that we've been called out about 8 times, but it's just the groundwater well that's overflowing.
okay, other comments or questions regarding the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? It carries 2-0. And then we're up to item 6.
Yes, sir. Pump Station 2003 is located in Oglethorpe Park at Stewart Avenue on St. Simons. This handles all of the flow from the south end of the island and pumps it directly to the Dunbar Creek Gravity Basin. We've had an increase of grit, which is causing pump failures in that area. We've had both pumps at the station have failed. We've relocated a pump from a different station into that station to keep it running and not on bypass permanently. These pumps were put in 1997. Estimated useful life for sewer pumps is 15 to 20 years. The estimated cost to repair the first pump was $22,000. The second pump was in worse shape than the first pump. And so we looked at options to replace. There are options there from different manufacturers, one of which, Velo, which was just shy of $50,000. However, it's got a 14 to 16 week lead time. That is a major station we need to get back online. Our recommendation is to go with the 2 Grundfos 98 horsepower pumps at 3,090 gallons a minute. for $75,570 because they are in stock and can be delivered next week. This will be coming out of the Systems Pumping and Maintenance lift station pumps budget.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Finance Committee recommend the full commission approve the purchase of 2 new pumps for Pump Station 2003 from Goforth Williamson, Inc., in the amount of $75,570.
And I'll second the motion. Any questions?
I do have one question. If we actually took one of our pumps and put it in there to avoid using the bypass,
Yes, sir.
is the bypass pump contained inside the pump station, or is it outside?
It is inside the fence at the pump station, and it becomes very useful for maintenance activities and also storm events. But running continuously for days does cause quite a bit of disturbance to the nearby
I was going to say
houses.
noise, right? The noise factor, right?
Absolutely.
All right,
And of course, it burns quite a lot of diesel while it's running.
right. So this way we can resolve the issue and replace the 23-year-old pumps.
Yes, sir.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, just a general comment. I would think that should we choose to go 14 to 16 weeks for the low-cost bidder, the amount of diesel we would burn at that site
I was
would
gonna say, how
far
much is
exceed
diesel?
the differential.
Right,
Yes, sir.
not to mention the noise complaints.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Passes 2-0. So now we move to the discussion section. Item 1 is leak adjustments.
Yes, sir. This item was requested by the mayor. Unfortunately, he is not here with us today, but we wanted to provide you with a summary of our leak adjustments as he requested.
Okay, proceed.
All right, sir. I have provided to you in graphical form and in tabular form information about the leak adjustments that we've granted since July 1st, that would be in this fiscal year. Tried to do a little breakdown for you just to give you some ideas of where those are coming from as far as residential versus commercial, what part of our service system, what size meters. And then when we say leak adjustments, there actually are 3 categories of adjustments that fall into that. Those are leak adjustments, which are the running toilet, the broken pipe in the front yard, pool fill adjustments, which are just as described, and sod adjustments. The sod adjustment is a new category for us that was recently incorporated into the ordinance. But again, just as it says, a sod adjustment, anyone who has new sod recently laid can request an adjustment to their water bill through that process.
So far this year, 929 adjustments.
That's right. So 929 adjustments for a total of $319,078.
So far in 2021?
FY '21, yes, sir.
Oh, in fiscal year 20,
So
okay.
it's 7 months. so-
Okay, all right.
But even, I mean,
Thank you.
even in 7 months, that's
That seem-
120 a month, 130 a
Yes.
month that we're doing, so.
That's a lot, yes.
Well, it's $319,000 in goodwill. That's basically what this is.
Yes.
And we have recently had some more focused staff time on getting these processed quicker. So we're getting these done in a more rapid fashion now to get these people their bill adjustments sooner rather than later.
Okay, interesting presentation. When you get it in a total like this, I think it can be informative. This would be beneficial as, if nothing else, a handout to the full commission would be my suggestion.
Yes, sir.
So it can elevate the understanding of the amount of goodwill that the utility is providing to its customers. Okay, anything else on this?
Not on leak adjustments, no, sir.
Okay, move to item 2.
All right. Likewise, we received some questions at last month's committee meeting concerning deposits and applying to commercial and residential deposits. We've been asked to go back and review the way that we were assessing the accounts as to whether or not they met the criteria for deposits to be applied. So our criteria this past, again, it's residential accounts that paid consecutively for 36 months, commercial accounts that paid consecutively for 60 months. And the way that we defined consecutively was they did not have a disconnection for delinquent account status. They do still have a deposit that's active on the account, and the customer themselves has been active for either the 36 or the 60-month period. So refining the criteria, and that way we have identified additional accounts to which the deposits can be applied if the commission so chooses. For residential accounts, there were additional 7,878 accounts totaling $725,351 that range from $5 to $250 per account. And for commercial accounts, there were 838 accounts for a total of $858,439, ranging from $150 to $23,500 in deposits.
So,
All that's in the reserve right now.
that's
Yes,
correct.
sir, that's correct. And then, when we look at our cash balances, you'll see that there's a customer deposit reserve, and that's where those balances are sitting.
So, total, that's a little over 1.5 million that will be refunded. We just wanted to verify that we wanted to refund all that at one time before we saw a big decrease in the cash balances for next month's report.
Here's a few thoughts. Utilities use deposits to guarantee payment, a month's worth, basically, in some cases more, 2 months' worth. So it's a means of managing risk. How do we assess the risk for a commercial account specifically? In my view, and my experience has always been that the commercial accounts represent a higher risk simply because consumption is higher. So how do we assess that risk such that we would not hold any deposit or a smaller deposit than what we typically hold?
Right now, that risk is based on their RU count. For each RU for that commercial establishment, it's a $150 deposit.
Right.
Certainly, there are customers that don't pay consistently every month but aren't a credit risk just because of the way that their accounts payable are processed. Large organizations, sometimes it takes more than the 20 days that we allow for the bill payment date to get through those payment processes. So we can certainly look at those accounts that haven't been disconnected, and that was one of the things that we did, rather than looking at someone who was a late payer per se,
Mm-hmm.
look at someone who had not been disconnected. So that's why we brought a larger list to you this time than we had previously.
Well, again, I'm going to drive a little bit about how do we manage the risk or assess the risk. Is on a commercial account, they have a payment history that rocks along, and maybe they've been late a little bit. But what's our early warning that their risk is going to suddenly increase? And in my view, a risk that is unknown would be when a business finances are such that they're about to file for bankruptcy, some protection. And we give no early warning of that. So what would be our early warning of any other form or analysis that we could assess such that we would want to make the refund to our customer?
Looking at payment history, you're absolutely correct. There's certainly a difference between an organization that pays every 35 days versus an organization who gets to 60 or 90 days, and some who entered delinquent status before, or cutoff status even before the payment is made. So we can look at past history and see where those payment dollars lie and within what period of time. Sort of an aging report for those individual organizations if we choose to go that route.
Well, I'm just thinking here of how do we assess the risk, and in my view, we need to have a process
Yes, sir.
whereby we assess the risk for those customers that represent potentially higher financial risk, and if we want to bear additional risk by funding their utility bill for another month in case of a late payer, because the people who ultimately pay for that default on an account is the rest of the consumer base. So there lies in my concern, is to be sure that our processes are sound such that if we choose to do the refunds, particularly to commercial or non-residential accounts, that our process for risk assessment is sound in a way that we accept whatever that risk level is. So that's my only point right there. I don't mean to get into the process here, but to simply elevate my concern as one commissioner that I think it should be a sound process for us to understand that risk profile, if you will. So that's my 2 cents on it.
I will say, and you alluded to this, when we refund these deposits, it is a credit on your bill. It will not be a check that is sent out to you. It'll just show up as a credit on your next month's bill. Depending on what your deposit amount is and your monthly bill, that could be a whole month's worth or even 2 to 3 months, depending on your usage. So,
Right. And I understand that. I don't have an issue with managing it that way for, let me just call it credit-worthy accounts, where we offer that refund in the form of a credit on the bill for future consumption. Is my concern, having had this working for another utility, had to assess those risks. I mean, I was doing collections at one point, one of those times. So it's a difficult thing to manage without the guarantee in some form, and that comes from either cash deposit, letter of credit, bond, and those, in my view, are the only ways to really manage that risk effectively after we've made some reasonable understanding and assessment based on payment history. And I recognize that some entities can't nearly process their payments as fast, and they may be on a 35 to 50-day lag as opposed to a 30-day lag, and I get that. That's a non-issue for me. But it's if you refund a $23,000 deposit in the form of a credit, and then that restaurant, let's say, closes the doors, we could be 2 months of consumption in reality that's at risk, and with no deposit, no guarantee, letter of credit, or no bond. Again, that in my view, that puts that cost back onto the other ratepayers in the future increases. So I'd ask y'all to look at that. What is the risk assessment, and are we effectively managing that risk?
Yes, sir.
Certainly, Mr. Oliver will take it.
Can I ask
Okay.
you, so you're feeling because of the fact that the commercial accounts have much higher usage and bills, that they're higher risk pretty much right away, right?
Well, it is simply because of monetary value. If you look at a restaurant, $20K as a deposit, for example,
Right.
and average residential is probably $100, $150, and okay, we got a lot of those, but you have a lot of individual players, but you have a single entity that closes the doors. Our ratepayers are going to be stuck with a 60-month bill. Basically, that's the reality of it.
Yeah, and that increases the risk, because, I mean, residential customers may just disappear and
Sure, but you can have a lot of them to make up 2 months' bill on a restaurant.
Right, yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from. Having worked in other utility, you have to manage that effectively, and you have to understand what are the early warning signs of that financial risk going up. And right now, it's our analysis of payment behavior, and the only other thing is after the fact is when they close the doors due to whatever issue it is, whether it's simply a corporate decision to close or a bankruptcy, if you will. Okay.
This whole last year was a good example of a number of businesses that just had to close simply,
Exactly.
unexpectedly, probably.
So again, as you make that assessment as to what we return to the customer, is I would just offer that caution is we need to understand that risk. Okay.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
The renters, do the homeowner pay the water bills, or do the individual renters?
It depends how the lease is structured. Typically, though, it's the person who's leasing who puts the water in their name.
Do we have a lot of those that we're having to cut off, more so than if it's going to the owner?
Well, our committee those dollar values certainly are considerably less, and we have a delinquent account program that catches those balances before they get too large, because once a customer misses that first month's bill, if that first month's bill is over $100, they'll get cut off the next month. So we only have 2 months of liability for that particular customer, and that's considerably less than what a restaurant or a hotel would have in that same time period. So with that delinquent account program, we're managing that risk from the receivable side.
Now, I will say, this is not every rental company out there or property manager out there. We do have a handful that the customers have had their water cut off because they have a leak and their landlord refuses to fix the leak because they're not the one paying the water bill. So they don't have any financial incentive to fix that leak. And those are the ones that do get a little discouraging after a while.
Do we have a policy where we waive the deposits for somebody that has any credit?
Not presently, no, sir.
We are looking at the ordinance language to see what can be adjusted on that. Currently, the ordinance says all new accounts will have a deposit.
Most utilities, if you have a good credit, they waive it.
Right.
They waive it, most utilities waive it on residential accounts with good credit, but it varies significantly when you leave the residential group as to how the utility policy exists.
How do we determine the deposit from industries? If you have a large industry company, a large water user.
Yes, sir. It's based on the REU count, and there's an REU audit either in place or one that's conducted when that particular organization joins our system. And we multiply each REU unit by $150, and that's the basis for the deposit calculation.
Do we consider waiving that to entice that industry to come into our community then?
I'm not sure that it's been done, but it certainly could be considered.
We can grant variances to our ordinances if it is necessary to do so. And so that, obviously, for somebody that size, that would come before the board to consider waiving a deposit of significant amount like that. That's above my signature authority.
Well, again, just to underscore what I was offering, let's be sure we have a good process for assessing the risk.
Yes, sir.
And then if in the staff's view, if that's sound, then proceed. With regard to the ordinance, that, in my view, that may be a candidate to move forward to the full commission to address, to provide the appropriate flexibility to staff to address those on an individual basis, whether it's a small business or a large business.
But then we would have to do a credit check, which we would have to pay for.
That's a reasonable way to do it, is do that. And
I think most
you know,
places that, large apartment complexes that rent, do credit checks on people before they move in.
right. And so
That could be incorporated into the account startup fee if necessary as well.
Right, sure. I don't know how much it would be, but I'm sure it's not. Yeah.
Is this item been before the general board?
No, sir. It was not. It's not an approval item. It was just for general discussion.
that's all my thoughts for that item. Commissioner Cook, do you have any follow-ups?
No,
Okay.
I definitely think it's something that's going to take some thought, so I'm going to agree with you.
All right. Now let's move on to item 3.
Certainly. And in the statements, I'll hit a few highlights for you. The balance sheet, our receivables are still staying in that $1.3 million range, so that's a comfortable range for us. Payables did increase approximately $500,000 from last month to this month, but that's because we're starting to see those larger project payment applications come in, so that's not surprising to us at all. That's certainly a normal course of business for that to occur. There are no questions on the balance sheet. I'll move to the cash balances sheet.
Please.
Yes, one note I did want to make, we are in discussion with our bank concerning the average balance versus the interest earned on our, what we call our overnight cash deposits. You may recall after we did our RFP for the banking services, that we made the determination to move away from using our average balance as a way of offsetting some of the account fees. Well, with interest rates doing what they're doing now, that hasn't been as advantageous for us as we had hoped. So we're in discussion with our banker about which would be better, if we could go ahead and switch back to that average balance approach rather than the interest approach. And the information that I'm getting is, yes, that would be the better approach for us. That's something that we can do under Mr. Burrows and my signature authority. And if we need to move back at some point in the future, we have the option to do that as well. So it's a very easy change to be made, but we believe there's a financial incentive for us to proceed that way. Customer deposits we talked about. No further comments from me on the cash balances page. Moving forward to our summary revenue and our divisional expenses. We are still projecting approximately $2.5 million ahead of budget at this particular point. You'll notice that the water and sewer base revenue are trending slightly under budget, but our other income item does offset that underrun. The other income includes such items as our new account starts and our delinquent account fees. You'll notice we have about another $250,000 of purchase orders from last month. Have a feeling with the approval that was made at the Facilities and Committee and here in the Finance Committee today, you'll see that number grow in next month as well. We do have a $150,000 dump truck also pending as a capital purchase, so you'll see that in February. No further comments for you unless there are questions.
I will note the under budget on the revenues, there are some seasonality to those revenues, so they're not as under where you would expect them to be as it would be a linear perspective.
I don't recall last year's being under budget, I mean,
I'll have to go back and check.
At particular points in time, to Mr. Burrows' point, obviously rainfall is seasonal, and our irrigation needs, whether it's through their domestic meter or through separate irrigation meters, certainly would impact that. And if it were through a domestic meter, that would also impact their sewer usage as well, because it is charged in the same bill.
I do not recall it being this much under last year at all.
We can go back and compare. Yes, sir.
No additional comments there, and then just three quick projects to hit on the progress report. With the completion of the Woodwood project, we'll see some activity there. Obviously, the water pollution control facility is now underway, and we'll see a financial impact on this month's report. And the meter change out that you received some information at the Facilities Committee, purchase order has been issued for the first of the next 2 years. So you see about a $3 million impact on that line item. One other note, we are currently in the process of creating and submitting budgets for next fiscal year with our divisional managers. Mr. Burrows and I have several meetings coming up, and we will present those to the Finance Committee at the March meeting. So mark your calendars, you have something to look forward to.
Okay, and when should the commission expect to get the preview before that meeting?
We would like to have a preview before that meeting.
Well, 1 week would be beneficial.
Yes, sir, most definitely.
And if we share that with all the commissioners, it's unknown as to how many others might attend the Finance Committee meeting. But at least if they do, they'll be prepped for it.
Yes, sir, we'll make sure that happens. Concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Cook, anything?
No, nothing. I think we've covered everything.
Chairman, anything from you? Andrew, anything else?